but I look at education as a lifelong learning experience and journey.
Hello, Taylor County. I'm Alex Renham with Unleash Tygart. I'm here with Christy Miller, Superintendent of Taylor County Schools. Christy, thanks for coming on the program again.
Oh, you're more than welcome anytime.
Hey, so when we last talked, I mean, this had just kind of hit. COVID had hit, and we were still kind of reeling from the initial, closing of schools and going all remote and what would happen. Well, now we're on the eve of looking at the fall, at the starting of the fall. Here's the end of July. Still a lot of, unfortunately, COVID times, it feels like dog years. I mean, there's a lot of time between now and the start of school, but we do have at least some semblance. You guys have put together a plan and a framework that that the public can kind of digest and start making their plans. But obviously, again, COVID can be lots of change. So I would love to kind of walk through some of that today. As you know, we polled some of our community. They had questions, a lot of them, more than we're going to get to in this session. But I'm just really grateful for you and all the other leaders in our county, at every level in state, and that are really trying to navigate this just unprecedented moment in time. I mean, I know we can look back 100 years ago, there was Spanish flu, but again, every moment like this, with with where we're at today in terms of our schools, our population. I mean, this is an unprecedented event, and
Yes.
leaders, it's tough. So thank you for all the work you guys are doing in that regard.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We're here to serve.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's talk about that. So I know there are a lot of concerned parents out there, and I know there's a lot of concerned teachers. You're concerned, I'm concerned, everybody's concerned. And so I think if we can start on this, one thing I wanted to be clear is it's okay for people to be upset and anxious and concerned. I mean, that's natural. But this is almost an Alex Renham personal, a PSA kind of thing. Our kids are concerned too. And I think it's so easy for all of us to miss that when we're arguing or unsure or scared or nervous, that all that energy is going into our kids. So I'm just asking everybody to take a chill pill for a minute. Let's all have a conversation. Let's sort it out. But man, those kids will soak that energy in and do what you got to do. I mean, take a walk, whatever it is. Boy, those kids, they don't need it. Already their world is upside down.
Yes.
I often tell my kids, I'm like, look, the real world, it isn't like this. I've lived on this earth over 40 years. It's never been like this before. We'll get through this. Let's get through this. So again, just my own PSA. I'll step down off the soapbox, but the kids are we can't let them get lost in the middle.
That's right. And this is about the kids and making sure that we're taking care of them and that we're educating them.
Yeah, for sure. So what obviously, we'll get into the plans in just a minute. Can we back up? I always like to start with the end in mind. What outcome? I mean, obviously we're looking education. We want our kids educated in those things, but really when we're looking at the risk reward of, okay, and you have folks who are listening right now that think COVID is a complete myth, and you've got folks that listen that haven't left their house in 3 months and they won't be for the next 3 months, and everybody in between. So what can we say? What outcome are we trying to get by bringing school back in and starting school as in this plan or whatever the ultimate plan is? Can you kind of elaborate on when you guys are sitting saying, is it worth the risk? What's the risk? What outcome are we seeking?
So I think that the important piece here to understand is our constitutional authority is that we are supposed to be providing a free, appropriate public education to the citizens of the state of West Virginia, and of course in Taylor County. With that comes great responsibility. So when we're sitting around and we're thinking about putting these plans together, we do take that responsibility very seriously. We know that when we have our kids in school, there's several things that we can provide for them that they don't necessarily get while they're at home or in other settings. One of those things is really being able to keep an eye on mental health. How are they feeling about themselves, their situations, where their plans are for where they want to go? How can we support that? How can we help them have a better outcome or the outcome that they're working towards? I always have looked at education as a journey, and it's a journey that never really should have an end. Although some do decide that high school's their end, or they go to college and they get a degree and that's their end. But I look at education as a lifelong learning experience and journey. So I think we need to first think about what is it that we can do to support that journey, understanding what makes our kids tick, what are the areas that they need support, how can we make their outcomes better than maybe even what they can imagine. But then when we think about those, there are also some basic needs that we have to think about supporting. And those basic needs also they just include food, health, you know, and the pursuit of education. So when we think of needs, you know, when we initially shut down back in March, the big message was we have to feed our kids because there is so much food insecurity in our state. And we see that in Taylor County as well. So that was really our focus. And then education became secondary and did not really catch up because we were still learning things that we could utilize to help make that experience between teachers and students better and helping to support them. So our end outcomes really are about mental health and the stability of our families and our students, plus those other basic needs that they have through food and just better outcomes for them. And then, of course, education. And I can't say that one's more important than the other because I think they have to work together. They have to be connected in order for us to really have a well-rounded individual as they move through and navigate life.
Yeah, those are all worthy pursuits and well needed. I mean, it was obvious that the food was such a focus, and I appreciate all the teachers, everybody jumped in, bus drivers all helped to really make that work. It's super important. So let's maybe, if you will, let's jump into the actual. You guys released 2 documents to the community. Say here's our staggered reentry plan, and then here's our back to school plan. And if I'd like to almost be pedantic for a minute and walk through that, so we make sure I understand it, make sure others can understand. We have a few questions about that. I'm going to share my screen and make sure we can walk through this. Okay, can you see that? All right.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So this is that staggered reentry plan, and help me understand. I mean, I know some folks were thinking, oh, this is how it's going to be going forward, and then the back to school plan got watched. This is literally just the ramp. I mean, this is the ramp to get in to the school year, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, so and our purpose in doing this is really twofold. Because we're going to be providing devices in grades 3 to 12 right now, and we're working on grades K to 2. We needed a mechanism to be able to bring the students in, to be able to get those devices out and work with them so that they understood how they use them, whether it be to participate in a Teams meeting with their teachers, you know, to be able to do assignments and resubmit those back to the teachers, interact with their classmates. So we have a lot of work that we need to do as far as that technology piece goes. But we also know that we're coming back with a lot of different protocols in place about how we're going to move through the building, about, you know, when we enter the building, when we exit the building, getting on buses, getting off buses, eating in the cafeteria or eating in classrooms, also going to the restroom. All of those things that I think we've taken for granted all these years really have to be thought through. And we felt that this was the best way to work with smaller groups of students to be able to accomplish the goal of the technology, but also that goal of those protocols that we really need to work on with our students.
Yeah, it makes sense. And when you say devices, so are these going to be laptops? What exactly is going to be issued to the kids to be able to continue their schooling, whether it's remote or in the classroom?
We're going to actually issue iPads
Okay.
to our students, and those iPads will have keyboard, charging cord, a durable case, so that, you know, we know kids drop things. I mean, we as adults drop them too, and we all have those protective cases around cell phones. So we're doing the same thing with the iPads.
Great. Okay. And so you say that's 3 through 12, and we're working on the funding for K through 2?
K to 2. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
okay.
we're also, I know that there's a concern out there in the community too, that a lot of folks don't have stable access to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So the department is working on a competitive grant that we're all applying for. And that's what we're looking to, is to figure out a way that we could use our area cell providers with their hotspots and be able to provide that stable internet in those areas that just do not have access to it. Of course, we're going to keep our schools open like we did last year so that folks could drive to those parking lots and utilize that if that's what they wish to do. We're also thinking of creative ways that we could set up appointment times if folks needed to come into the school, you know, because you have to lay papers out. It's very difficult to work in a car, you know, a laptop, iPad, and then you have to spread the papers and things out. So our next piece, as we're working through the funding for our K-2, is also about that stable internet access so that folks can do those kinds of things that they need to do.
Makes sense. Where did we as a county get the funding for all these? I mean, these iPods or iPads aren't cheap. So where
No,
did that funding come from? The state? Is that county level? Is it grants?
it came through the CARES Act. It's the money that
Okay,
was released to
gotcha.
county school systems through the CARES Act. The competitive grant that we're against all the other counties, other 54 counties, is also money that the state had that they are just helping to support the other needs that exist out in our counties. So they also pushed out some other funding to us through federal programs. So the state really is, on the education side, pushing that money out to the local levels to really help us be able to participate in ways that we've not been able to and support our students in multiple ways.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. The connectivity thing is still huge, so I'm glad you guys are seeking that. You know, I'd hope there's others in the communities that might open up their Wi-Fi at their locations around the county. That would certainly be helpful. I know there's security concerns with that and usage concerns, and but boy, I would hope as a community we can find a way to help those folks. It's great they'll have access to a device, but without the connection, it's not going to be as helpful. So this, I don't think we got to go through each one of these. I think people can read these and see, you know, based on your last name and what grade your kids are. And unfortunately, for some folks, their kids are going to be on multiple days. Mine are that way. You know, if you have one kid in odd grade and one kid in even grade, you're going to be going. But either way, this is just for that first phase.
Yes.
So I also have I have the back to school plan.
Yes.
And I want to catch one thing real quick for you. On this one, it starts on September 8th, and that's the date. That date's still accurate at this point, as far as we know, correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay. And I say that, obviously, I couch all that because, again, who knows as time goes on. But I see through the 15th, and so that would mean like this reentry plan would be done on the 16th. However, the back to school plan starts, if we're in tier 3, it starts on a Monday. So will all folks will all the other grades be going on Monday? Come Monday the 14th, will all of those grades 1 through 12 be going as normal on Monday the 14th?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Yes, they will, unless you know something else gets thrown at us that you know that we just don't know.
Sure.
Because you're right, in that tier 3 you see those alternating days
Right.
you know for kids to attend. So we may have to make adjustments even to that staggered schedule. We just had to get something together because we wanted the parents to know what we were looking to do so they could make their plans with their students that may not be in school on one of those days.
Yep, makes sense. So as we look at each of these tiers, I mean, again, I don't think we'll go through each one of these in detail necessarily, because folks can read. And I hate to insult people when they're watching, you know, hey, let's walk through the PowerPoint presentation and read every bullet. It's a pet peeve of mine. But what I would like to dig in is on a few questions that I've got down is, how are we deciding what tier we're in? You know, who decides? Is that you? Is it the board? Is it something at the state level? How will we know and be able to expect what tier we're in come September 8th or October 5th or whatever it may be?
Right. So we've been meeting with the state superintendent every Wednesday, and we met again this morning, and that question was brought up again because we do ask that every Wednesday. It is our understanding that the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources, Dr. Clay Marsh, and the team are putting together metrics that will be used to guide what tier we should consider starting with, or you know, going ahead and forging ahead with. We would like to see us go back to school 5 days a week, but our number one goal is the safety of our staff and our students. So we'll look to those metrics. We will consult, of course, with the local health department because you know, within those metrics there are several things to consider. You know, how many active cases are there? We're looking at age groups that are being impacted. What would it look like with our kids coming to school and perhaps not knowing they have a virus, not necessarily COVID, but what is that going to do to their family if they take something home? Looking at the community spread, looking at the factors, all those factors that they talk about, they're supposed to be part of these metrics.
Yeah.
Our understanding is it's going to be county by county. So the question then comes about, well, what about our neighboring counties? We don't have an answer to that yet either. We were told this morning, August the 14th is the latest that we would get those metrics. And we're like, whoa, you're really asking us to kind of stay on standby, not knowing what we should do, but using all of those pieces that they say they're going to share with us based on our counties, then we would consult with the health department, and then our board would make the decision based on those metrics and things as to where we would begin.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I'm envisioning some kind of weighted average metric where, there would be some influence of counties around you. I mean, if Mon County continues to be a hotbed, and Marion and Harrison, I mean, we're surrounded, I would think there'd be some influence on that number. So in effect, what you're saying is you'll get some kind of metric number recommendation, something from the state based on Taylor County, and then that'll be presented to the board, and then a decision made. Do we expect that's a weekly review? Is that a bi-weekly review? Do we have any insight on that?
So, we talked about this a little bit last night at the board meeting, because, when you look through each of these plans, it is worrisome for parents, because they have to have things in place for what am I going to do with my child if we're in this tier or this tier or that tier. So our hope is that if we have to make a shift, that we could stay within that tier for a number of days. And it wouldn't be something that we're just going to switch on a dime. So let's say we would start in tier 2, but then the metrics indicate that we really needed to consider going to tier 3. We could make that decision overnight, but then determine that we're going to stay in tier 3 for 2 weeks, for a week. Because again, we have to consider all the other factors that go into getting our kids to school safely and being able to support the needs of the family at the same time.
Yeah, makes sense. Man, what a logistical entanglement. So how will, I see temperature checks at the top, so who, is that going to happen as they come into the school, or bus drivers a part of that? What does that look like just from a tactical perspective?
So it would be a logistical nightmare if we would ask our bus drivers to take the temperature of every student as they got on the bus.
Right.
And we don't have the employees to be able to ride each of our individual buses to take the temperatures before they get on. And that does make sense, because if we can catch someone with a temperature at the bus stop and say, I'm sorry, but you have to go home, that certainly does make sense. But we don't have the personnel to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to check temperatures as students and staff enter the building. We'll have people assigned to do that. We have the infrared thermometers, and we're getting more. And we will make sure that we have processes in place so that we don't have students, standing on top of each other. We'll only unload like one bus at a time. We're going to have to think about parent drop off and pick up. The logistics, we understand what we have to do, and we have a plan of how we're going to go about doing that. It's just that at each school, they're now going to have to really dig deep to figure out, how am I going to handle this situation and this situation and this situation? But we will check them as they come in.
Yeah. And what happens in the flu season when kids are sick? Generally, they may have a fever, they may have whatever. Are all those going to be treated as a potential COVID case that then feeds into the decision making of what tier we're in? Again, I'm asking hypotheticals that are tough, but that's a realistic. I mean, that's coming. It's going to happen. How are those going to be treated, and then what actions will come from that?
So currently, our nurses do a weekly report to our local health department regarding influenza. So we're going to add COVID to that weekly reporting. And we're going to have to depend on our families to notify us if they've had their student to the doctor, and the doctor says you have influenza A, influenza B, or whatever they may test for, so that we can then keep track of what's influenza versus what's COVID. And of course, folks need to understand, we're not going to know what COVID is unless a test is administered and it would come back positive.
Right.
We just have a symptom checklist that we can refer to if a student does or a staff member presents with a fever.
So then will they have tests there on site at the school for a quick test or anything? So no, it's.
No, I don't see our nurses being asked to administer those tests. Although the health department has stated that they could assist with the need for those kinds of tests.
Gotcha. Okay. So back up to the high level again then. So we have these tiers and we have this criteria that'll be coming to us from the state recommended, or at least some numbers we can read and make some decisions. The board will then review that on an ongoing basis. So once it's decided that there is maybe a tier change coming, or maybe even there isn't a tier change coming, but a regular beat of communication so people don't have to wonder and worry what's going on. What's the method for communicating tier changes and consistency, or just what does that look like, I guess?
So we do have a school messenger system, which is a call out system that as long as we have the correct phone number, which is going to be very important for families to understand, we have to have a correct phone number to be able to contact you. And it's more important now than ever. But we use the school messenger system so that we can send a message out to everyone. We're also going to continue to use the county website, Facebook, Twitter, and then we also push all of that out to our principals of our buildings so they can post it also on their school websites, their school Facebook pages, Twitter, however it is that they communicate through social media. But we're also in the process of expanding the Remind app that many of our teachers utilize. We're moving up a tier so that we also have the Remind app to be able to communicate out any messaging that we need to get to our families.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not telling you something you don't know, I'm sure, but the amount of misinformation that can come during the middle of this and multiple sources. I mean, I think people really want to hear what you just said and know, all right, I'm going to go look at this place consistently. Yes. Because, Joe Schmo down the road on Facebook is saying this is going on, but it may or may not be accurate. And I think it's going to be super important to seek out those official sources of information on this. Because
right. I want to say again, too, parents, please reach out to the board office if you ever have any questions, because we can answer most of your questions. And if not, we'll tell you we don't know the answer, but we'll get back to you because it's important that they feel, that they can do that through any of this. Just pick that phone up and call us, and we'll connect you to the right people there within the office. And like I said, if we don't have the answer, we will seek the answer for you and get back to you.
Yeah. And so one of the hot questions people kept asking, and you can see it on the national scale with COVID. I never thought we'd be arguing about a piece of cloth over somebody's mouth, but all over the nation's arguing. Well, it's not necessarily an argument we're getting from folks is, all right, my kid, he or she's not going to wear a mask all day long. And we see in these tiers, what does that, I mean, I see where it says, like in tier 2, for instance, it says, the mask is required if social distancing cannot occur. Can you give us a scenario, just kind of what you guys meant by that, and what does it look like? Obviously, we've got we've got masks associated cannot occur pretty much along the way. Masks determined by current status. It seems soft. So can you help just give some clarity around what that means and what kids are going to be expected to do?
Yes, and I first want to start out by saying I'm being completely transparent here. We cannot move furniture around in the space provided in all of our classrooms to have 6 feet between each of our students. I'm being completely transparent with that. So then becomes the question, what do we do? In the toolkit that was released by the West Virginia Department of Education, it did state that students 9 and under would not be required to wear masks all day long. We're also looking at when is it appropriate? Even for older students. We know that when we get into the middle school and the high school, and students will be changing classes, and they're more apt to be closer to each other because they're social. Those are very important social times for our students. We're going to ask that they wear a face covering of some kind. We're going to be providing those. Haynes Corporation has already provided a large supply. I did a webinar today with a local company. Just have to see if that's going to be a viable option for us financially. But they're going to have to wear masks. And I know some people are asking, well, if they're going into the cafeteria and they're taking it off to eat, it's the same thing as being in the classroom and not having it on. I get that, but we are looking at food service being socially distanced and serving students differently. So there are things that are going to be in place for food service, but when it comes to the classroom, we're not going to be able to distance, but we're going to do our best. We know that kids need practice in putting those masks on and off the right way. We see adults that don't even do it correctly. And I see it, I've watched videos about how you're supposed to put it on and don't do this and adjust that, because all you're doing is then putting that bacteria in the places we don't want to be the recipient of that bacteria and then host it and grow. So we have a lot of work to do in this. Our thought process is that we'll work with folks, and we'll work with different age groups on what's appropriate for them. Our board does want our students to wear masks. They want to do everything they can to mitigate the spread of this virus. So, we're going to be working with that. And I know a lot of folks have said that if you're going to require my child to wear a mask all day, they're not coming. And I get that. I really and truly do, because I know how difficult it is for me as an adult to even wear one through our board meetings. But we're going to do everything we can to try to help distance our kids, keep them in core groups in our younger grades, trying to really schedule those bathroom breaks, teaching those good hygiene practices that before you leave the room, wash your hands. When you come back, wash them again. Do not share your materials. So we're going to have other things in place that will help mitigate the fact that we can't be socially distanced 6 feet apart, in our classrooms. We just don't have the size.
Yeah, and so if I can summarize, maybe put words in your mouth, you tell me so really if they're in the classroom, they're 10 and over, is all of these tiers are going to have masks, or just in tier 3 or tier 2, or what maybe you could just summarize that.
I think we're looking at masks being required in 10 and over if we can't socially distance in our classrooms.
Gotcha. For any tier. Okay. Makes sense. And so what about on the teacher? I know a lot of folks were like, well, is the teacher going to have a mask or a face shield or something? Obviously they're teaching, and help us understand what the teachers are going to be doing there too. And
right. We've been so fortunate, the relationship that we've had with the Grafton Taylor County Health Department, because they've been able to secure face shields for us. We know that speech therapists cannot do their job if they don't have a face shield. Our younger students who are learning the connections between letters and sounds, they need to be able to see that with the movement of the mouth to understand, why looks like it does, with the mouth, and why it's positioned like it is, or ba, ba, ba. So we have secured face shields, and we're going to continue to do so that our teachers have that option to wear the face shield. We know it's not as protective as the mask, but yet it still provides a barrier between the sharing of those droplets that everyone is concerned about. So we have secured 84 of those because we know we also need them for bus drivers.
Yeah, and so to that point, we're talking about personnel. How are they feeling in terms of what you're hearing from them, and what considerations are being put in place? I mean, many of them have children that they have to worry about childcare during, if we were in tier 3 and what's going on there, and even comorbidities and other challenges. I mean, what are you seeing from a staffing situation?
So many staff members have reached out with those very concerns. We do have the Families First Coronavirus Act that we can work with our staff members through leave options that they will be able to have. And we're working on communication to get out to the staff so that they can understand how they work through some of those leave scenarios, because that really is what they are. The fact that we do have some staff that we know have immunocompromised systems, there's ways that we're going to be able to work with them. We'll work with families as well, with some other options that are available to continue the education, but maybe just in a different way. So I think our staff also has a large task ahead of them too, because they're going to be participating in a lot of training before we actually bring our kids back on September the 8th with the iPads. because this will be new for many of them, and understanding the different apps that they're going to be able to use, as well as the Teams application on there, and making best use of that. So we're going to be providing training for them too, because that's a concern of theirs as well. Another big concern, of course, is, let's say we're in Tier 4, where the governor and everyone says you have to close your schools and you have to go to remote learning. So the concern there is really, what does that mean for our teachers? Unless the governor says that all businesses are closed and everyone needs to stay home, our teachers and other personnel are going to be expected to report to their place of employment, whether that be in Jarvis, Grafton High School, transportation, wherever. So that they have access to the stable internet to be able to provide instruction and contact with our families. But one of the things that have been expressed to us is, during the closure from March the 13th to the end of school, some of our personnel were working from, say, 7 in the morning until 11 at night to try to accommodate the different times that students are available with a parent, so that they can do what teachers needed for them to do with them. So we're really going to have to start thinking about what would a typical day look like for a student in remote learning, but also what is the day going to look like for our teachers, and set some guidelines around that, understanding that there's going to be different needs. So how do we meet those?
Yeah, makes sense. Let's dig a little more into the online learning, because I see, this blue area down here that says, look, there is an option for online only. And so can we just dig into that a bit? So obviously, if we're at Tier 4, everybody's going to be online, everybody's going to remote. Again, barring anything else, teachers will be there and accessible, and what that looks like is still to be determined. But is that going to be seen equal to in-school learning? If parents say, look, I'm gonna choose, my kids are going to be online only, are they able to re-enter at any time? Like, let's say after the Christmas break, and they haven't skipped a beat. Is it going to be along with the rest of the education, or is it going to be a complete different program? And help me out. I'll throw you a lot of questions, but just kind of walk us through what does that online only version look like?
So the online only version is virtual learning. And I know there's a lot of confusion between remote learning, blended learning, and virtual learning. Virtual learning is online only. And we're going to offer 2 options to our families. The first option is to go through the West Virginia virtual school. That is with a teacher that provider hires to deliver the instruction to our students in an online platform. It is rigorous. It is, it's not one that students and or parents should take lightly. They should think about the type of learner that their student is. Are they self-motivated? Are they goal-oriented? Will someone have to stay over and on top of them all the time to get them to complete their work? Because there is an expectation that you're going to move through the program and be at certain completion points as you go through. There are exams. However, what West Virginia Virtual School has decided is they're removing the unit exams, and there will only be a final exam that has to be proctored. The great thing is we can proctor exams through Teams. We can set it up so that we can watch the student take that exam, and we can proctor, using a computer. We didn't have that option before, but we do now. So that's the first option, is strictly West Virginia Virtual School. But the other option that we are going to do is we're going to offer virtual school, again, totally online, but it's going to be a Taylor County teacher using Taylor County curriculum. So we just found out about this option and exactly how that could work yesterday, and they reiterated it today on both of the meetings that we had with the department. And I think that's a really good option, particularly for some of our teachers who are worried about their own health, or they may have a spouse or a family member that they are the caregiver for, and they're concerned about what they're going to take home. So the easiest way to explain that is, let's say we have 4 fourth grades in one particular school. Only so many students are going to come face-to-face. We have all the other students that want this online virtual option. And let's just say it's 10 at Anna Jarvis, and it might be 3 at Flemington, and it might be 4 at West Taylor. One of those 4th grade teachers would then become the virtual teacher for all of those students, and deliver Taylor County curriculum to them. And once we found out we had that option, we were like, wow, this is fantastic. So we're going to offer that option in grades K to 5, because we know that those are very crucial time periods for our students to have that contact with a person live that they can see, and they can provide some more group work, one-on-one support, and those kinds of things in grades K to 5. When we get to grade 6, grades 6 through 12 will be on the West Virginia virtual school platform.
Gotcha.
Today, this afternoon, we did send out a school messenger message that we are beginning to take. It's a 3-question, really quick survey. It's a fillable form that we ask which choice they're going to take. Is it going to be face-to-face or is it going to be virtual? Then we ask them what school they go to, and then, and I may have this out of order, but which of the virtual school options are they going to participate in? Because we want to make sure that we are planned appropriately for the numbers of students that are going to take that option. So then the next question becomes, how long do you have to stay in? So if a student registers for virtual school, after the first 14 days of virtual school, they're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to stay in it, or am I going to opt to go back to, and I hate to use this term, regular school, because virtual is regular school.
Physical school, right?
Yeah, physical, brick and mortar. That's the best way to put it, brick and mortar school. If I'm going to stay in virtual school after that 14th day, I'm there until the end of the semester, which currently I believe is June 14th. So they will have to stay in it an entire semester.
Gotcha. Okay, good. That makes sense. A lot of questions about that, Christy, as you might imagine.
Yes.
That's a neat option. The whole Taylor County led thing. So, so they would be along with their peers. I mean, they're learning the same thing that the other peers in the county are learning in that.
Yes.
Now, the West Virginia school, although it will be the same grade level type stuff, it could be different curriculum, I'm guessing.
It could be, but the key is no matter if you do the West Virginia virtual school or you do the Taylor County virtual side, they're the same standards that we expect kids to master at those grade levels. It just may be presented differently through the West Virginia virtual school than it is with a Taylor County teacher.
And then how is that going to impact any extracurricular activities? Are they going to be seeing, you know, immediately minds will go to homeschool versus public school versus whatever, but this is a public school option for remote learning. So so what does that look like in extracurricular, whether it's sports or music or anything like that?
So if a student is registered for West Virginia virtual school, they are a Taylor County student. It's just they are receiving their education online through West Virginia virtual school. So they have the right to participate in any activity that we have going on in their school. So we also have the option for our homeschool students to participate. They just have to enroll. And as long as they're taking one online virtual course, they can participate in extracurricular activities. That was a change made by our legislature this past legislative session. A lot of people refer to it as the Tim Tebow bill, because he was the first homeschooler that graduated, you know, from high school and homeschool and then went on to a successful career in college. So that was a change that was made by the legislature. So as long as they register with us for at least one course, they are considered eligible to participate. Now, the thing that they have to remember is we still have those SSAC rules that we have to follow if it's sports related. You know, they've got to have a grade point average, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But that's all they have to do.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So, and to that point, sports and extracurricular activities, I mean, that's just as much crystal ball as anything else. What do we have a current status for that? I mean, a lot of people are concerned about fall sports. Is there any update that we can share with folks and where we are with where we stand there?
Yes. You know, we successfully matriculated through the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, which we're finishing up the phase 3 now. Or I think we may have finished it. No, I think we're finishing it now. Then we'll go back into the conditioning phase or flex phase. That's what we're going to be doing. The flex days are going to be conditioning. It's not sports specific, but it is helping to get our kids prepared to go into the play for whatever it is they're doing. Bernie Dolan, who is the executive director of the West Virginia Secondary Schools Activity Commission, which we refer to as WVSSAC, stated today that there are still questions that they're bantering about regarding spectators Are we going to play? You know, they're going to be looking at metrics too to determine, you know, how we're going to move forward. We're also watching surrounding states, because we do have some surrounding states that are further along in bringing athletes back and doing competitions and things with them. So we're going to be watching a lot of different things. And he said that his hope is that we're going to be able to have our students out there competing. His hope is that we can have spectators. It may have to be in a different setting, including through live streaming or other methods, thinking about issuing only computerized tickets so that we're not exchanging things between people who might come to a live event. But all of those pieces are being shared with our principals and superintendents as they're being made. They are following the same CDC guidelines, National Federation of High School Sports guidelines, that have been out there that all the states are taking part in, about, you know, sanitation and pods and those kinds of things. And that's going to continue.
Yeah, makes sense. It's this is a problem. I mean, you see Major League Baseball struggling with this. You see other.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all struggling with these things. And again, that's a modicum of patience and collaboration at this local level is probably extremely warranted in that, right?
Yes, it is.
Just so these for everyone to know, these two sheets I pulled up, they came from TaylorCountyBOE.net, right? So that's
Yes.
where these are. And if you, I know one of these, it says revision of 717. As you update these, obviously you'll communicate that out. But if anybody's interested, they can always just go to the website, right, and pull these down
Yes.
and see what the latest is.
Yes,
So
yes, they
that's
can.
TaylorCountyBOE.net is the place you can get these. So awesome. I do have one last question for you, Christy, and I'm really grateful that you came on and spent this time. There are a ton of questions that I wasn't able to get to that people are asking. I'm sure they're going to ask you. Maybe we'll come back on as we get closer and talk through some more of those, or as things become more clear. But what's one thing that you and the teachers and bus drivers and custodians and all school personnel, board members, everybody in the process, what are you asking of us, of parents, of the community members? What are you asking of us right now to help make this as positive as possible for the kids in our community?
I think that everyone needs to understand, first and foremost, that the safety of your children is our number one priority. Your children and our staff, that safety is our number one priority. And we are going to continue to plan and make sure that no matter what tier we're going to be operating in, safety is our number one goal. Safety has been a goal of the board for quite a number of years, and they've done a lot of great work in making sure that our schools are safe for our kids. And we're going to continue that even as we go through this changing times. The other thing that I would ask the community and parents to really think about is, if you have questions, please reach out to us. Don't speculate. Like I said, if we don't have the answer, we'll get the answers to you. But I think we have to remain open to communicating with each other, because really what that helps to do is, I think it helps to calm nerves, calm those feelings of, what am I going to do if this happens? Or what am I going to do if that happens? So please reach out and communicate. And if there is a need for us to communicate in a different manner, let us know. We're open to any ideas that folks have to communicate with them and get the messaging out that they need. I also want the community to understand that we know there is a real need for childcare for school-aged children. There are some things that we're working on there too, because we really have not sat down to make a real pinpointed plan about after school and the ways we've offered it in the past. And we understand that, but there are some community members that are really thinking outside the box of a way that we might be able to offer some other things for parents and families to consider around that whole child care piece for our school-aged children.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, you go back, kind of look at those two things you just said. One is safety is the number one thing, but at the same time, you mentioned earlier, you're trying to balance the mental health and basic needs of food and safety and those things as well. And that's those are sometimes competing forces when you're saying we're going to pile kids into a school where a virus may be lurking, right? So it's such a heavy burden on you and the other board members and the teachers and all the like. And as a community member here, I'm grateful for you taking that seriously. And I would also add, just for folks, when you talk about asking questions, some of these questions won't have answers, but I guess, what's important, I think, from what I could tell when people are asking questions for us to relay to you, it's more if people know that there is a mechanism with which to make decisions and that's clear and transparent to them, then that, to your point, that lowers anxiety. And so there are some people that want answers to questions that are unanswerable, and they'll be unreasonable about it. But I think most folks, at least that reach out to us, most folks are really they're nervous, they're concerned, and rightfully so. But they understand, as long as there's a framework that's transparent, and they understand how these decisions are going to be made, they can then make their decisions for their family, because this impacts them. And again, I just appreciate you guys, putting this out here still in the midst of a lot of uncertainty, and committing to that continued transparency and framework. And like I said, maybe we'll have me bring you back on. Hopefully, I'd love nothing more than this thing just to all of a sudden go away. But that's probably not the answer. What's going to happen? We're probably going to have to grind through this for a while. And I just appreciate you and others taking the time to really think through this and
well, you all are welcome. And I would like to just publicly say this too. Taylor County Schools is so fortunate that they have the employees that they do. Mm-hmm. They have gone out of their way to serve on task force, other committees, leadership teams within their schools, putting themselves out there, trying to help make decisions that are going to drive what we really need to do for our kids. And I just cannot say thank you enough. And it seems very small, but they have done outstanding work. It makes my job easier. It makes it makes the community feel better, because they do know that folks are working on this to try to do our best by our students and them as their family unit as a whole. And they have just been terrific. Taylor County is very fortunate because the school system is full of loving, caring individuals that come together in good and bad times to try to do the best they can for the students that attend our schools. And I am just so grateful.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, teachers and administrators often are the whipping posts for the public sometimes. And the reality is, when I'm talking to school personnel and I see them in action, of course, there's probably some folks that could care less. I mean, you always have that in any organization, but man, they really care, and they're really putting their all into it. And I'm appreciative for what they do as well. All right, Christy Miller, Taylor County Superintendent, thank you again. All the teachers that might be listening now, administrators, school personnel, bus drivers, janitors, all the bunch, thank you all for what looks like a really difficult challenge to try to sort this out. And thank you to the community for your patience. And you and I talked beforehand. If somebody has an idea, a thought, anything, call you, because many minds make good ideas sometimes, and might be a perspective that you don't have from your chair or somebody else. And so maybe it's so if you've got a good idea about something, instead of saying, gee, why aren't they thinking about this, call you and see if you're thinking about that. And maybe you aren't, and maybe you can now, so just kind of a last PSA, and I'll let it go. But Christy, thank you. I appreciate your time. Good luck. And if you have anything you want to try to get out, certainly reach out to us, and we're glad to have you back on at any time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this.
Thanks, Christy. Take care.
Bye-bye.